Everyone around the world wants to know what happened at the historic Cheeseball protest in New York City this past weekend.
And today I will be eating this entire jar of cheese balls! Cheese balls! Eat those cheese balls! Eat those cheese balls!
Let him cook! Let him cook! Let him cook!
We've seen all of the riots, the, Columbia University break-ins, but at the end of the day, it was all about the cheese ball. I'm Alex R. Wagner, and this is No News is News. Woo, baby. No News is News. I forgot that, the show, because I'm, imagining the TikToks in my head, so I'm like, that's our TikTok, because you got the cheeseball guy, and then you guys watch the cheeseball, and then midday. But if you're watching the actual show, if you're watching the actual podcast, that's when the music drastically cuts, and we just keep it on me, and there's no, logo or intro. But I, looked away like freaking, O'Reilly factor, I got a smoke break, I can do this now. I should take those zins and, do a whole, Tucker Carlson bit, I didn't know I was on the air. Yeah. Because I think Tucker did that. Somebody did that. Somebody did that with a vape. It was either Hannity, Tucker, or O'Reilly.
Uh-oh. Now our villain of the day, Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, because despite Swalwell...
And why is it always these conservative guys get caught on camera after the camera? I think it's because the camera guys, the liberal camera guys. All right, guys. Lots of shit happened this last week. First off, though, Cheeseball Man, what the fuck? That's the most amazing thing ever. At the end of the day, society comes together for a cheese ball. The guy also claimed, if you remember correctly, he was allergic to gluten, and he was worried about the police, but they did not show up. He was able to eat 700 cheese balls in New York City. It was pretty crazy. But lots of other crazy stuff going on this week. And if we're not talking about the Columbia protests or whatever this NPR fiasco is, it's clearly incited by liberal media. They count each one of them. They're like, excuse me, how many protesters do you have today? All right, 73. Live from NPR, there's 73 protesters. Will the police arrest them all, or will they let them break into buildings? But chicken butts. We had a different story that is also in the news that we're going to start with, because this is sort of an election show. I was curious about bringing this show back and doing the No News is News and doing this whole thing and all that tidbit because of the election. I think Jon Stewart was as well, but then we all forgot about him. He was doing stuff for a minute and they forgot about him. But it's okay, because they're going to go on summer hiatus, and he gets to go on vacation and come back for 8 weeks, right before the election. But as for me, I'm here the entire time telling you, vote for RFK. He wants to end Armenian genocide, and everybody else wants to start a war. So that's where I stand right now today, and I will change my stance on every day.
Over 100 years ago, during World War I, the Ottoman Empire perpetrated the first genocide of the modern era when it murdered 1.5 million ethnic Armenians. That ethnic cleansing wiped out thousands of years of Armenian presence in Anatolia. Today, the oldest of all Armenian territories is now the victim of an ethnic cleansing campaign. This time it's Artsakh, also known as Nagorno-Karabakh. During the Soviet era, the Kremlin forcibly incorporated this Christian territory into Muslim Azerbaijan. Artsakh had been Orthodox Christian and Armenian for over 1,000 years. It has one of the oldest, most beautiful cathedrals in the world. While the world was focused on Gaza and Israel with indignation and outrage from every direction, we heard almost nothing about this mass expulsion of the entire population of one of the oldest Armenian states on the planet. This is a situation where peaceful sanctions could actually work. The U.S. still has leverage in that region, and it can use that power to mobilize all of the nations in that region to reverse this humanitarian tragedy. We should also seek the removal of the blockades in Armenia by Turkey and Azerbaijan. Instead of starting another war somewhere, I'd like to stop one.
But the other big story is that an ex-president got gagged with the spoon. They're deep-throating him. They're doing it. They're gagging him. They're making him gag up and down the court. So, Trump was back in court in New York City this week with the Heshmani case of the porn stars and the Michael Cohens of the Cohens. And they were upset about his tweets. And so, $9,000, Mr. Lawyer, sir. Give me your client's money. I need the $9,000. Give me your client's money. And so they gave him the money. Here's $9,000. And you want to know what Trump did? He immediately went outside and bitched about the gag order. Here you go.
Okay, thank you very much. This gag order is not only unique, it's totally unconstitutional. I'm the Republican candidate for President of the United States. I received this honor in record time. Nobody's ever gone faster. It's never happened. Nobody's ever got the numbers that we got. And I'm sitting in a courthouse all day long listening to this stuff.
Gaggedy gag. Gag me with the spoon on the gag order. Gag orders are ridiculous, and that's why I will not be gagged, said Mr. Trump. And guess what's next? Trump decided because of the gag order, it would be a great time for a gag order rally.
That's why Biden is trying so hard to jail. He wants to jail his political opponent like they do in third world countries or banana republics. He wants to give it a shot. There's only one problem. Every one of these fake cases is bullshit. Every single one of them. Terrible.
In Wisconsin, live for your entertainment, it's the ex-president of the United States breaking a gag order in front of 50,000 people. Trump had some interesting things to say at his first rally back on the campaign trail while also in court and gagging on a judge's what? I don't know. But he came up with something on the fly. He was like, I was on a fucking plane here, and I just thought of this. Inflation tax is a Biden tax.
It's an inflation tax. It's a new tax. I just thought of it in the plane coming up here. I never used that expression. I call it Biden inflation tax, because if you add what inflation has done to you, that's about a 30% tax increase, and I think even more than that. You could get a pay increase, but your pay increase doesn't nearly overcome what's happened with inflation. So I just came up with the name. I thought it was actually quite brilliant. It's called an inflation tax.
Trump invents new form of taxation. Sorta. The guy rambles so much that he almost invented a tax that he doesn't want to do. Just stop talking about taxes, sir, if you do not want taxes. That's the best way to do this with the campaign. I promise you. I assure you. Inventing taxes from the other guy, not going to, just no taxes. We know you're the tax guy. We know we had better taxes with the tax man of the tax. It's like Mr. Smith goes to Washington with fucking Trump on the fucking taxes. But we don't need to hear more about what you're going to do with the taxes. So that's my tax plan. Finally, at that rally, Mr. Trump, he bumps into a figure, and I remember meeting this guy, Mr. Uncle Sam. They call him. They call him Uncle Sam, and it's a man who may or may not be homeless, who follows Trump around to every single rally, and it's like a fucking football thing for him or whatever. And he dresses up as Uncle Sam, and he stands outside and he does like crazy shit, and he has like a loudspeaker, and sometimes he like rides a bike or unicycle or something. I can't remember what the hell this guy does, but he's like out there being chauvinistic. And I remember that from early 2020, right? No, 2021. 2021 Trump rallies when we were handing out flyers for my movie, Plug It Now, Christmas in Florida.
He's like a perfect Uncle Sam. He goes, we need you. That's right. Thank you, Uncle Sam. Get up here for a second. Look at this guy. Man. Wow. He's in good shape. He's in good shape. Thank you, Uncle Sam. Look at this guy.
The last one you signed got lost.
Oh, I'll sign it.
Yeah,
Give me, I'll sign it. I'll sign it for you later. Yeah. He asked me to sign it. I said, I got to make a speech here, Uncle Sam.
But shit gets weirder.
Give me a pen, somebody. Let's get Uncle Sam taken care of. Come on. Give me a pen. I got to get a pen.
And then he asks for a pen, and it just goes.
Let's go. Yeah, good. Just throw it up here. Give me a pen, please. You think Biden can bend down like that? I don't think so.
Anybody have a pen? Throw a pen at me. I'm the president. Throw a pen at me. What the fuck? Trump rallies are crazy. Then he went back to court, though. And when he went back to court again, he came back out again. And when he came back out again, he was like, you know what is unfair? Everything. Everything's corrupt.
So we begin again. This is a case that should never have been brought. Every single major legal scholar, Jonathan Turley, Greg Jarrett, Andy McCarthy, Dershowitz, every single scholar, Mark Levin, the great Mark Levin, had a whole show on it last night, said that this is a disgraceful case. It's a disgrace to the New York state and city court system. And all of the cases are, frankly, all of them are. You probably saw last night that Jack Smith got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. It was released late last night, and it's a big story.
Everything's made up. Everything's a hoax. Everything is a hoax, people. And that's why all of the protests that are going on around the world are Biden's fault. So, according to Trump, all of the protests are because of Joe Biden.
The Biden protests that are going on are horrible. It's all caused by him because he doesn't know how to speak. He can't put two sentences together. He's got to get out and make a statement because the colleges are being overrun.
I knew Joe Biden didn't respond, but I did not know that it was Joe Biden's fault just because his fault. But it's a good one because, like, he doesn't really have to answer any questions about protests because he's not president right now. And he's just basically like, let me escalate this shit. Let me fucking, I don't have any dog in this fight because I'm not Jewish, but let me escalate this. Hey, he should respond. And now that we are in our protest section, I'm gonna do a little bit more podcasting now. We're gonna talk about the story a little bit more. We're gonna tone it down, kind of spin it out. If you want to know more about what's going on with the Israel-Palestine from a completely unbiased source, and I really do truly mean this, plug with no promotion, unbiased with Jordan, your lawyer, or your lawyer Jordan. I can't remember what her tag is, but it's this. I think she's a lawyer. I'm assuming she's a lawyer.
Some people who tell you that all of the chants are anti-Semitic, but that's just not true. And I'm Jewish, okay? That's me telling you not every chant is anti-Semitic. There are some people out there that are peacefully protesting the continued military action of Israel and the killing of Gazan civilians while also wanting Jews to live in peace and the state of Israel to exist. Just like there are Israel supporters out there who agree with Israel fighting back against Hamas, but don't necessarily agree with the killing of so many Gazan civilians. You can't just take out two buckets and throw people into one of the two because of one particular belief that's held by any given person. That's just not how it works. That's how we are here in America too. There are people all across the political spectrum. So let's give some examples of some chants and the conflicts behind them so that you have a bit more awareness. Let's first take the most innocent phrase, which is Free Palestine. Standing alone, this is not anti-Semitic. Again, it speaks against the occupation that pro-Palestinians, view as an occupation. The chant "from the river to the sea." This is more controversial depending on who you ask. Some pro-Palestinians simply say it's a call for humanity, it's a call for freedom for Gaza. However, with that said, Hamas adopted this phrase "from the river to the sea" as a call for a single Palestine state on the land that is occupied by Israel and Gaza, meaning the extermination of the state of Israel and all who live there. And don't forget, it's a known fact that Hamas's charter actually called for the extinguishing of Jews in Israel.
It gets confusing, but I am here to help out on a dumb level and try to explain this thing the best I can and be as impartial as I can as the impartial comedy show of the world. Okay. There's protests that started on university campuses, specifically Columbia University in New York City, as well as NYU. But Columbia University became the prime suspect for this entire story. Why is that? Well, here's where we go down the rabbit hole, a little bit of Alex Jonesing. There is a front with social media news, with TikTok news, to associate this story to Kent State and the 1960s and early 70s protests over the Vietnam War and police intervention. I've seen this associated to Kent State way before any police intervention from these protests.
As you probably already heard, student protests in support of Palestine are getting shut down by police at a whole slew of colleges. And when you look at this footage of riot gear cop versus teenage student, it is eerily reminiscent of Kent State 1970 to a degree that I'm kind of surprised people aren't drawing that comparison more. If you're unfamiliar, in 1970 we're in the thick of the Vietnam War, draft has already been instituted, and President Nixon has announced that we are going to expand U.S. efforts with this campaign into Cambodia. Kent State students protest in spite of orders to disperse, so the National Guard comes in with a jeep that a stone is thrown at, so then it escalates to tear gas, more stones are thrown, and then the National Guard opens fire, taking 4 lives, leaving 9 injured, including 1 permanently paralyzed. And that's remembered as a national tragedy. Most people now would not say that they hope the students protesting got suspended. And while some of that is assuredly hindsight 2020, I do think the draft is a big difference in these two situations.
So I believe that, again, they were already equating themselves to their final outcome. They claim to be anti-war, and for a while I was only hearing live tidbits from NPR, and those tidbits of information about how this story was transpiring in live time were definitely biased. I knew that. I knew they were going to be biased.
Students are refusing to back down as pro-Palestinian protests intensify at campuses across the U.S. And a federal appeals court has ruled against 2 state mandates that restrict gender-affirming care. Good morning. I'm Windsor Johnston with NPR News, and here are today's top stories. Student protesters at colleges and universities across the nation are ramping up their calls to end Israel's war in Gaza.
They kept counting and saying more and more universities. First, it starts with the Ivy League universities. Now there's these Southern California university protests. Now they won't let the fucking valedictorian speak because she said some anti-Hamas thing or anti-Israel thing, and they're all just anti-war protesters. And then you get the conservative side if you look over at it, and you look over at Daily Wire or anything else, and immediately they're,
America's college campuses are in a state of complete meltdown, at least in the blue states, where administrators are catering to the whims of America-hating, evil, radical people. The question everyone is asking right now is an easy question. Why are these students the most privileged people in literally the history of the world? No skill set, no problems. Why are they LARPing as terrorists and standing for murderous groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the like? Why are they overtly chanting anti-Semitic slogans? Why are they doing all of this? The answer is very simple. They want revolution.
If you say anything about anti-Israel, then you're fucking Hasidic, fucking Islamic, fucking piece of shit. And it's just like, all right, that's a bit much too. And so one of my favorite podcasts, comedy podcasts for unbiased news sourcing, is Jordan Long and his show, The Boys Cast. And when this first transpired, The Boys Cast, they haven't had their episode this week, but last week, their episode, Danny and Ryan, the 2 comedians on the show, interacted, and they basically were like, well, why can't the Jewish students just like fucking not walk there?
It's been going on for a while, and it's just, you know, as wild as ever, and a lot of it's happening in New York, so it is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had an NYU, although I think they started arresting everybody the other day, which again is insane because you let all the George Floyd stuff happen, and then nobody was getting arrested for that, and then this is just the bridge too far is the thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Let them fucking protest. Like, it's their, as far as I understand, it is their right as Americans to protest. So like, let them protest. I don't know. They're not like causing any damage. They're just like, some people are like, again, they're like, some Jewish people are like, oh, I don't feel comfortable walking through them. And you're like, okay, well, don't then. I don't know. Go fucking set up a counter protest across the street. That's like, I mean, I remember in Toronto, there was forever, right at college and like university, there, every year there's a literal Israel-Palestine protest.
There's just one every second.
No, but no. This is like when I was still living there, though, because I remember accidentally walking into it, and it was like, I asked the cop, and he goes, they do this every year, and he goes, we put the Israelis on one corner, and we put the Palestinians on the other corner, and they're like penned in, and they get to have their protests.
And they just sort of yell at each other.
They just yell at each other. You go, yeah, that's fine. But like, for sure, you'd be out of your mind to think, if you're a Palestinian, that if you start walking into the Israeli side, that
that's a good move.
That, and vice versa. I don't know.
And like, why can't they just do their anti-war protest? Now, shit's gotten real, okay? And just so you know, this has always been here. It's always been this way. And we'll start that off this way with Ronald Reagan as governor of California in 1969, or complaining about the 1969 protests in Southern California, and that the administration could have done more.
Those people told you for days in advance that if the university sought to go ahead with that construction, they were going to physically destroy the university. Now, why did you
negotiate many times?
Negotiate? What is to negotiate? What is?
The university is a public institution.
That's right. But the university,
for its own community and for the community of Berkeley that live around it.
All of it began the first time some of you who know better and are old enough to know better let young people think that they had the right to choose the laws they would obey as long as they were doing it in the name of social protest.
Which, doesn't that sound familiar? Yep, it sounds awfully familiar. And then we get to see what happens and transpires on university campuses across the globe as this escalates into what they inevitably want it to be, which is the Kent State outcome, being arrested for basically breaking and entering.
What happened here at Kent State University 50 years ago defined an age.
The guardsmen opened fire on the students.
67 shots. At an anti-Vietnam War protest, 4 dead, 9 injured.
I've never been able to just completely forget it.
Student photographer Howard Ruffner was on the Hill that day. His pictures soon appeared in Life magazine.
Also, again, I want to remind everyone that these protests are not about countries that are here. This is not a U.S. thing. We'll get into that later because it might actually really be a U.S. thing right now. But for the let's get into it right now. So they asked the Secretary of Defense.
Ms. Locken just said there'll be about 1,000 U.S. service members operating a Pier system off of Gaza. How many of them will have guns, Mr. Secretary?
Well, typically all of the deployed service members carry guns, and they have the ability to protect themselves if challenged.
So if someone from land in Gaza shoots at our service members who are on the $320 million pier that we're building, you're telling me our service members can shoot back?
They have the right to return fire to protect themselves. Now,
well, do we think that's so? Now I want to move to the likelihood that you think someone from land in Gaza might shoot at our service members on this pier. Do you think that's a likely scenario?
That's possible, yes.
This is a very telling moment, Mr. Secretary, because you've said something that's quite possible that could happen, right? Shots from Gaza on our service members, and then the response, our armed service members shooting live fire into Gaza. That is a possible outcome here so that we can become the Port Authority and run this pier.
So we might be very close to actually being in a war, but right now we're not in a war. So this is a lot of propaganda on both sides. And so I kind of side with the New York City mayor when he says that this is a youth thing. They're being captured.
I know that there are those who are attempting to say, well, the majority of people may have been students. You don't have to be the majority to influence and co-op an operation. That is what this is about. And so if we want to play the word police, you could do so. I want to play the New York City police, where we're going to protect our city from those who are attempting to do what is happening globally. There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it.
And they definitely are being captured. People are being captured. There was a video like a long time ago of him like going around like being like, you gotta find the drugs underneath the table.
It's imperative that you should know what's inside your household. And no one can state that you can't search a room in your own home. You write the Constitution. There are no First Amendment rights inside your household. Look through it closely. You don't know what your child may be hiding. For instance, a gun could be hidden. A small caliber weapon could be hidden inside a jewelry box. Something simple as a crack pipe, a used crack pipe. Could he have found it on the street? That's quite possible. But this is a discussion piece where you should start speaking with him to find out what is he doing with it. Cameras, try to determine what's taking place. Behind a picture frame, you can find bullets. What does that mean to find bullets? Does it mean your child is carrying a gun? No. Where there's smoke, there's possible fire. Where there's a bullet, there's possibly a gun.
Weird shit like that. But love him. Love him in this scenario because he has some context to what's going on. Let's check out some of this situation and what's been really going on here. Well, in Florida, this is how they take care of it.
70.04 of the Florida State Statute. You have been given a lawful order to disperse. You have refused to follow this lawful order. At this time, please consider yourself under arrest for refusing to disperse. Please do not resist arrest or any other enforcement action which could result in risk of injury which may occur. We will be utilizing chemical munition if you choose to stay.
Are we backing up? What are we doing? What are we doing, Ish?
Wow, that's pretty simple, right? If you don't want people somewhere and they're unlawfully somewhere, you send out warning information and you put tear gas out and then you spot them. And then like later on when the tear gas is deployed and it's all done and dandy and they're all just laying there, then you go and you just politely cuff them. As long as they don't resist arrest, they're probably not going to get hurt that way. Seems like Florida's got this shit under control. Meanwhile, in LA,
me fucking learn! I gotta learn about public health!
Yeah, that kid is trying to learn, okay? So he's trying to learn about health or whatever in LA. So leave him alone, police officer. The parallels between Florida and LA on that one. Wow. I mean, come on. Just learn from the people that do it best. Florida does policing best. The end. As for New York City, everything was fine and dandy. Mr. Adams was on their side, but then they broke into a building.
Guys, my team, come on, link arms. Hang on a second.
And then once you break into a building, then usually people come and take you out of said building you broke into. Wow, look at that. As for Brown University, they actually discussed with their administration and are getting a vote on the exact same things that all of these other Ivy League schools are asking for in the fall. So, Brown University, smarter than the rest of the Ivy League schools, clearly. So somewhere in the mix of all this protesting this weekend, there are flare-ups. I would hope that it wasn't a University of Columbia student that decided to take down the American flag and raise up a Palestinian green and red flag that doesn't really mean much since they don't have a country. But thanks to us, and I'm pretty sure this video is silent, so if it is, I'm going to patriotically talk over it. But thanks to us being, civilian, normal human beings that love each other and go to day jobs, and we're like goddamn teenagers being stupid, we took down that Palestinian flag. And then the police rose up the American flag properly in New York, as we do. Hashtag 9/11 style. Also, part of this protest is this whole TikTok thing again. And guess what the TikTok thing was that time? The TikTok thing that time?
Last night at Columbia University, an autonomous group of students took Hamilton Hall, and I want to talk about it. First and foremost, I think what a lot of people are missing is just the historic significance of Hamilton Hall when it comes to student protesting. So let me go through it really quickly. We start in 1968, and I made another video kind of tying in the 1968 protests. This is a super historic protest. Columbia literally has a class. I took a class called American Social Movements taught by the same professor who teaches a class called Columbia 1968. It's literally a course at Columbia in the history department because of how significant this specific protest was. Today, Columbia is celebrating these protesters when at the time they obviously treated them horrendously.
Osama bin Laden's letter to America. So I guess that's what really started all this, is that they read it. Have you read it? Have you read it yet? Have you read The Terrorist that killed a bunch of people? Did you read it yet?
Never in my life could I have imagined that Americans would say Osama bin Laden was right.
He answered them straightforward. He did not insult people. He just lets you know straight up.
How can you say that with that text written in your background? The creation of Israel is a crime which must be erased. This is a call for genocide. Fabricated lies that Jews have a historical right to Palestine. Where do you think Jews come from? This is erasure of Jewish history, of Jewish indigenous ties to this land. In the part that you conveniently skipped, he says, Jews have taken control of your economy, through which they have taken control of your media and now control all aspects of your life. If you have read this entire document and what you have to say is that Osama bin Laden was right, you are a threat to civilization.
Did you? If you did, you might be a TikToker or two. The press secretary has been asked for days now if the president is going to respond to the protests comments of the I mean, nobody even cares what she said, but halfway through the questioning, a doorbell went off in the room.
No.
I have to say what I have to say, and just give me a second. So I'm not going to speak about somebody's doorbell. Is that a doorbell?
Alarm.
An alarm. Okay. All right. And I'll speak more broadly. I can't speak to youth and support and voters. That's not something I can do from here.
Props to her. Honestly, this is the first time that I've actually respected her. I really do respect her on this one. How did she get back to actually answering the question after somebody had a doorbell go off in the room? And who's the monster that has a doorbell as their ringtone? It's like the weird, like, what are you, from MSNBC? What are you, from I think you're probably the Daily Beast or AlexJones.com or InfoWars or something. Like, what the hell? A doorbell is your ringtone? Stop it, lady. Knock it off. Ruining everything for everyone. You almost fucking started World War III. Hey, serious question now. Have you ever owned a business?
Wonderful. Have you ever owned a business? I've said this before, and I'm sure I'm going to get cut off saying it now, but I am the that daughter would be a yes or a of no. small business owners. So that's who great. had I'm small a daughter businesses too. when I was growing up. So okay, my this parents should had be a really easy laundromat. for you. Let's sorry? try this again. Let's try this again. Listen carefully. If you need to write a note down, that's fine. Have you? It is kind of comical when you're supposed to be the acting secretary and you can't answer a question. So I'm with you on the comedy. Unfortunately, it's not that comical because it's real life. So let's try it again. Have you, not the daughter, not the mother, not the sister, not the aunt, have you ever owned a business? Congresswoman, you asked me why the rule is important. Okay, let's try this again. So you're making a ton of money. You're making legislation for business owners. You're supposed to be in charge as the acting person, yet you can't answer a simple question. Amazing to me. Maybe we should just pay you more money and that would help you answer the question. I'm going to go back to the question again. Have you ever owned a business? Not a trick question. Congresswoman, there are working people in this country who do not choose this to be is the very reason why you can't get confirmed.
One of my favorite things to do is listen to Washington Today, which is a C-SPAN thing that recaps the entire day, and just listening to the nonsense that comes out of these committees. They literally spent over a minute, more than a talk, explaining how to answer a question and then not answering a question. And then we have an update on one of our ongoing stories here on No News is News, which is Karen versus Mike, a.k.a. Karen is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Mike being the Speaker of the House. Just a guy named Mike, just trying to do his job, and Karen always trying to fuck with him. Well, now Karen's like, you know what? I would love for everyone to say that they like this Mike guy.
And so next week, I am going to be calling this motion to vacate. Absolutely calling it. I can't wait to see Democrats go out and support a Republican speaker and have to go home to their primaries and have to run for Congress again, having supported a Republican speaker, a Christian conservative. I think that'll play well. I'm excited about it.
Let's see how that works, huh? Let's see how that works. That work for you? No? All right. You let me know. And finally, today, before we go, this last week was the White House Correspondents dinner, and I guess that's a thing that people care about that are in media, doing media shows like this one. So, you know, it's just really sad because, like, once Trump comes back in, like, he hates us and we're all gonna die and stuff. So
I've seen that toast a bunch of times, but it landed very differently this year because depending on what happens in November, 7 months from right now, this time next year, I might not be sitting here. There might not be a White House Correspondents' dinner or a free press. While our democracy wouldn't exactly fall apart immediately without it, the real threat looms larger. A candidate with outward disdain, not just for a free press, but for all of our freedoms and for the rule of law itself.
These people, out of all of the stuff that we watched today, including Cheeseball, the thing that she's worried about is Trump being elected. That's 6 months away, people. That's 6 months away. Let's worry about tomorrow.
I've been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now.
Yeah.
But in our country, we need you to be Mamala of the country.
worry about whether these protesters can eat some cheese balls or if Trump gets gagged again. All right? Let's worry about that. And with that, I will leave you adieu for this episode of No News is News. This is the best that I could news of the news. And we'll do another episode next week and see what else happens in the world. Goodbye.
Guys, I guess just don't fall the fucking sky, you know?